That moment, Skip realized how much he hated Frosby. His blood boiled with anger. Edward Skip Skipperton spent most of his life feeling angry. It was his nature. When he was a boy, he had a bad temper. Now, as a man, he was impatient with people who were slow or stupid. He often met such people in his work, which was to give advice on managing companies. He was good at his job. He could see when people were doing something the wrong way, and he told them in a loud, clear voice how to do it better. The company directors always followed his advice. Now Skipperton was 52. His wife had left him 2 years ago because she couldn't live with his bad temper. She had met a quiet university teacher in Boston, ended her marriage with Skip, and married the teacher. Skip wanted very much to keep their daughter, Maggie, who was then 15. With the help of clever lawyers, he succeeded. A few months after he separated from his wife, Skip had a heart attack. He was better again in 6 months, but his doctor gave him some strong advice. "Stop smoking and drinking now, or you're a dead man, Skip. And I think you should leave the world of business too. You've got enough money. Why don't you buy a small farm and live quietly in the country?" So Skip looked around and bought a small farm in Maine with a comfortable farmhouse. A little river, the Coldstream, ran along the bottom of the garden, and the house was called Coldstream Heights. He found a local man, Andy Humbert, to live on the farm and work for him. Maggie was moved from her private school in New York to one in Switzerland. She would come home for the holidays. Skip did stop smoking and drinking. When he decided to do something, he always did it immediately. There was work for him on the farm. He helped Andy to plant corn in the field behind the house. He bought 2 sheep to keep the grass short, and a pig, which soon gave birth to 12 more. There was only one thing that annoyed him: his neighbour. Peter Frosby owned the land next to his, including the banks of the Coldstream and the right to catch fish in it. Skip wanted to be able to fish a little. He also wanted to feel that the part of the river which he could see from the house belonged to him. But when he offered to buy the fishing rights, he was told that Frosby refused to sell. Skip did not give up easily. The next week, he telephoned Frosby, inviting him to his house for a drink. Frosby arrived in a new Cadillac, driven by a young man. He introduced the young man as his son, also called Peter. Frosby was a rather small, thin man with cold grey eyes. "The Frosbys don't sell their land," he said. "We've had the same land for nearly 300 years, and the river's always been ours. I can't understand why you want it." "I'd just like to do a little fishing in the summer," said Skip. "And I think you'll agree that the price I offer isn't bad. $20,000 for about 200 meters of fishing rights. You won't get such a good offer again in your lifetime." "I'm not interested in my lifetime," Frosby said with a little smile. "I've got a son here." The son was a good-looking boy with dark hair and strong shoulders, taller than his father. He sat there with his arms across his chest and appeared to share his father's negative attitude. Still, he smiled as they were leaving and said, "You've made this house look very nice, Mr. Skipperton." Skip was pleased. He had tried hard to choose the most suitable furniture for the sitting room. "I see you like old-fashioned things," said Frosby. "That scarecrow in your field. We haven't seen one of those around here for many years." "I'm trying to grow corn out there," Skip said. "I think you need a scarecrow in a cornfield." Young Peter was looking at a photograph of Maggie, which stood on the hall table. "Pretty girl," he said. Skip said nothing. The meeting had failed. Skip wasn't used to failing. He looked into Frosby's cold grey eyes and said, "I've one more idea. I could rent the land by the river for the rest of my life, and then it goes to you, or your son. I'll give you $5,000 a year." "I don't think so, Mr. Skipperton. Thank you for the drink, and goodbye." "Stupid man," said Skip to Andy as the Cadillac moved off. But he smiled. Life was a game, after all. You won sometimes, you lost sometimes. It was early May. The corn which they had planted was beginning to come up through the earth. Skip and Andy had made a scarecrow from sticks joined together. One stick for the body and head, another for the arms, and two more for the legs. They had dressed it in an old coat and trousers that Andy had found, and had put an old hat of Skip's on its head. The weeks passed, and the corn grew high. Skip tried to think of ways to annoy Frosby, to force him to rent part of the river to him. But he forgot about Frosby when Maggie came home for the summer holidays. Skip met her at the airport in New York, and they drove up to Maine. Skip thought she looked taller. She was certainly more beautiful. "I've got a surprise for you at home," Skip said. "Oh, a horse, perhaps?" Skip had forgotten she was learning to ride. "No, not a horse." The surprise was a red Toyota. He had remembered, at least, that Maggie's school had taught her to drive. She was very excited and threw her arms round Skip's neck. "Oh, Father, you're so sweet, and you're looking very well." Skip and Maggie went for a drive in the new car the next morning. In the afternoon, Maggie asked her father if she could go fishing in the stream. He had to tell her that she couldn't, and he explained the reason. "Well, never mind. There are a lot of other things to do." Maggie enjoyed going for walks, reading, and doing little jobs in the house. Skip was surprised one evening when Maggie arrived home in her Toyota carrying 3 fish. He was afraid she had been fishing in the stream, against his instructions. "Where did you get those?" "I met the boy who lives there. We were both buying petrol, and he introduced himself. He said he'd seen my photograph in your house. Then we had coffee together." "The Frosby boy?" "Yes, he's very nice. Perhaps it's only the father who's not nice." "Well, Pete said, 'Come and fish with me this afternoon.' So I did. It was fun." Please, Maggie, I don't want you to mix with the Frosbys." Maggie was surprised, but said nothing. The next day, Maggie said she wanted to go to the village to buy some shoes. She was away for nearly 3 hours. With a great effort, Skip didn't question her. Then on Saturday morning, Maggie said there was a dance in the nearest town, and she was going.